By the end of the video, you'll understand how P. Diddy's case went terribly wrong, and Cassie's witness statement might land him in prison for life.
She was open about that.
Why they paint Diddy like that? Now I know dang well he was not on that boy crying. Was she? Diddy face wasn't like that. They doing him bold. What up, TKG? Another slash breakdown video. Hit that like button. Comment below. Let me know what y'all think. Subscribe. Right to 100,000 subscribers. Shout out to Law and Crime Network for dropping the video. Let's get right into it.
The following day. But as far as just kind of comparing the allegations to her witness testimony, it was kind of a difference in the sense that we had only seen her allegations through words, through paper, through court filings and that sort. But, when she got on the stand, it's now, for jurors in their minds, they're putting a voice and they're putting a person to, a name finally. They're seeing just from her side of the view, just kind of her relationship with Diddy. Much of the testimony was very foundational. When did she meet Diddy? How long before, the two engaged in sexual intercourse? As well as, she was briefly asked about the CNN video, and she did confirm that she was leaving a freak off when the vicious beating kind of happened. As far as just some other big highlights.
She was leaving a freak off? She was escaping a freak off, and P. Diddy runs out in a robe. Where are you going? You were the main dish. You are the headliner of this freak off. You don't get to leave before the curtains close. Is that what you're telling me? Hey, I ain't gonna lie. If this true, P. Diddy gotta go. He gotta go forever.
Were shown a lot of photos of her and Sean, as she refers to him, in court, as well as her friends. We saw a photo of him being Diddy, Kim Porter, another friend, and Cassie, all at the 2006 BET Awards. We saw a photo of Diddy with Cassie, another friend, and another potential witness to this case, all sitting on a couch. We had seen photos of their trip to Miami. We saw photos of them at a strip club together here in New York City in 2007. For Halloween, she had spoken about just, her time working as an artist for Bad Boy, and just that pretty much, some of these allegations she had talked about in her lawsuit, but also that Diddy controlled a lot of aspects of her recording career. She signed a 10-album deal. However, she only put out one album plus a mixtape. A lot of the songs that she had even recorded had just gone either, unreleased, or they were leaked and that type of sort. And so some of those were like kind of the big highlights, I would say. They were kind of touching base on who all else kind of played a role in, as far as, security. She had named people like D-Rock and Bounds and Uncle Paulie and Malik. As far as assistants, we heard one of the big names being Christina Coram, as well as David James, Neil Dominic. And so that was kind of touching base a little bit as far as, how Diddy's staff kind of interacted with her. But for the most part, another eye-opening point was just that, Diddy had security around him 24/7. But she also had said that, sometimes the security's job was to kind of check on her and make sure that she was doing what she was supposed to, essentially. That, if she wasn't answering the phone when Diddy had called, that he would send his security to go and find her. And so, as far as just some of the testimony, I'm sure
that ain't security guard, that is henchmen. You saying Diddy had henchmen? 24/7 henchmen? Diddy's moving around like old classic mob bosses.
we'll get into more details as far as kind of, the freak offs and that type of those types of allegations. But, it really did start off pretty foundational, and I was pretty surprised at, how composed she was keeping it all while on the stand. Again, she was very soft-spoken, but she answered the questions directly. If there was something that she was confused about or wanted Emily Johnson to rephrase or just to ask again, she was open about that.
Why they paint Diddy like that? Now I know dang well he was not on that boy crying. Was she? Diddy face wasn't like that. They doing him bold.
There were very brief moments of laughter, but that was just because, it was nothing that had to do with any of those graphic allegations or anything like that. But it was just, pretty much she was asked, like, why didn't you release more albums? And she's like, is that a question for me? And then there was a little chuckle. But for the most part, it was very much a serious tone. A lot of eyes were on Cassie. A lot of eyes were also on Diddy's children when they were talking, for example, about Kim Porter and just how that relationship had ended while Cassie was starting her relationship with Diddy. And so we got to kind of see finally for a while now.
I heard there was rumors allegedly in the theory of in the conspiracy theory world that P. Diddy knocked off Kim Porter. I don't know if that's true or not. I heard he got her whacked off to get with Cassie and had no distractions. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard. Y'all know anything about that? Comment below if you know anything about that.
Because it's almost been 2 years since she had filed her lawsuit at this point, that we kind of got to see her explain her own view from her own mouth, as opposed to us seeing these allegations in like lawsuits and that type of sort.
So I have two questions for you. One, how is the jury responding to her testimony and more of the graphic points of her testimony? But also, what was Diddy doing? What was Sean Combs doing? Was he looking at her? Was she looking at him at any points? So again, what was the jury's reaction and what was the reaction between Diddy and Cassie?
Well, let me tell you, it was a very packed courtroom, so it was really hard to kind of see all the jurors and their faces. But from the little view that I got of just seeing these jurors, they were listening intently like they have been even since yesterday, taking notes, kind of watching back and forth, both, the prosecution asked their questions and then going over and kind of looking at the witness, that being Cassie, while on the stand. Now, as far as Diddy goes, he was watching very intently. Like, let me tell you something. He is very much so participating in his defense. He is jotting notes down. He's passing these notes because we do know when the cross-examination comes down, it's going to be Ana Maria Esteval who's going to be doing that line of questioning once the defense does get to the cross of Cassie's testimony. But as far as Diddy goes, he definitely kept his eyes on Cassie for the most duration while she was on the stand, which I can only imagine was felt intimidating on her end, possibly. I'm obviously not in her mind, so I don't know that 100% or anything like that. But as far as Cassie looking back in Diddy's direction, even when she had gotten off the stand, she didn't look at him once. She just walked immediately outside through the gallery, didn't look at him, didn't look at his children. There was no type of like soft smile, none of that. I think, even she might not have noticed her husband was right there in the courtroom too, but she kept laser focused, got out of the door, and then that's when everybody else kind of left the courtroom for lunch break.
Pretty surreal, to say the least. Let me ask you this. At the beginning of the day, we kind of got a sense of what's going to happen next. Everybody's been talking about the freak-off tapes or these sex tapes and how they're going to be visible in the courtroom, whether or not the gallery is going to see these tapes. I imagine when she's going to have to talk about these tapes, she's going to have to view these tapes. What was the discussion earlier this morning regarding the tapes, how a witness will be questioned about the tapes, and whether or not anybody in the gallery will ultimately see them?
Yeah, so there was a lot of concerns about these exhibits, mainly more so, I guess, from us on the press ends portion, just seeing that these photos were sexually explicit and very graphic in nature. The government planned to show some of these images because they, according to the government, were 6 still images. They were nude images of victims that were sexually explicit, but the government kind of came up with a solution that, they would provide headphones to the jurors so that way, we wouldn't hear any type of audio of, these exhibits that were going to be portrayed. The government wanted to keep this material out of public record. The defense, meanwhile, says it's pretty much adult pornography. And so that's when we kind of started connecting the dots that these were, videos and images of, these freak-offs that the government is kind of talking about that's central to their case. The defense says it's a privacy issue, and they question what us in the press would pretty much do with these types of images. And you know what? We have a right to kind of talk about them, especially not in a salacious manner or anything like that. I don't think that was any of our intents on, being in the courtroom while these images were played or anything.
If you're going to say he forced somebody to do something, well, you got to watch the film. You got to see if they look forced. Research purposes, bro. They got to put that film on display.
like that, but apparently it seems like, a point for the defense that, they were just wondering what the press would do about it, especially with.
All right, if y'all want to finish the video, go to Law and Crime Network, hit the like button, comment below, let me know what y'all think. Till the next one, I'm out. Peace.